First of all, just thank you for having me. Thank you for coming to my little presentation. Grazie per tutti. So this week, I came to work on compositions in a few different ways. And the first, and the one I intended to when I applied for this residency, was to make recordings in Italy of the sounds of Italy, a lot of which I got done actually in Venice before I even came here. But one of the things that I recorded, for example, was the pond over just down the street. We went late at night and did a field recording of the frogs and the crickets there, which are things that I'll use in electronic pieces like the one that I'm about to present. So in my electronic pieces, I use noise in the same way that a composer would use notes in a scale, right? So any kind of sound can be musical material, which is why recording things outside or any kind of sound is useful. So this is a piece that I wrote back in December of last year, so relatively recent. It was accepted into 2 different electronic music festivals. It's going to be performed first in New York City in 2 weeks for the New York City Electroacoustic Music Festival, where it will be performed in 16 channels. So what that means is there's going to be 16 speakers that the sound will be moving around, which allows spatialization or a spatial aspect to the sound as part of the piece. So in that case, it will be played in 2 rows of 8 speakers surrounding the audience. Okay, and it's also accepted at the Cube Festival at Virginia Tech, also in America, which that'll be in August, where there it's going to be performed in 24 channels. So a set of 12 speakers above and 12 speakers all around the audience there. We're going to hear it in stereo, so just these 2 speakers, but you should still hear some of the moving sound as it goes through. Now, the piece, this piece I mostly used sounds that were recorded from voicemails sent by a stalker. So actually one of Justine's friends was being stalked by this really crazy guy who she now has a restraining order against, sent her, tons and tons of these voicemails that are really creepy and weird, and they made really good material for a piece. So I titled this piece Unrequited. It's only 1 minute long, it's a very short piece. But the idea is kind of dealing with this kind of dark, obsessive quality. Okay, so we can listen to that now.
We insert 2 weeks. We spend time with me. Love you. It's very important. Please call me. I'm so sorry. I love you. I miss you. I need to be with you. Please consider spending time with me. I love you. Please spend time with me. I can handle it. Please consider this.
So again, that's...
Oops, sorry. Got it.
So again, it's just a very short piece, but I find that the material, even though it's not traditionally musical, there's very few pitches in there or like repeating rhythms. I find the material makes it a really interesting piece because you hear like the sounds of a shotgun going off, kind of implying the threat of death that comes with these kind of crazy voicemails, which, women in America seem to be dealing with a lot these days, or I guess forever, honestly. Anyway, so the recordings that I've made, well, here I plan to use for a piece in that style. Obviously it'll be much happier than something like that. So that's one aspect of my work here. The other aspect of my work here, which I didn't expect as much, was the organ, which 19th century organ is in really good shape and provides a lot of opportunities for me as a composer just to explore the possibilities of the organ. Now, when I write acoustic music, I like to use a harmonic technique called microtonality. Okay, so most music we have 12 notes in a scale, or like a major scale or a minor scale that you get on a piano or normally on an organ. But in between each of those notes, there's actually infinite divisions where you can have an infinite number of notes in between the notes. So that's where the idea of microtonality comes from. Now, of course, the organ is made to play music from the past that was written within tonality. In fact, that organ uses a specific tuning system, which is used in like classical style music or Baroque style music. But by primarily manipulating the bellows, you can reach these notes in between the notes. So each day that I've been here, I've actually been recording an improvisation that I did. So it's something that I was spontaneously composing, which manipulates the bellows in a way that creates microtonality. So I'm going to play two of them. First of which is only 30 seconds long. It's another very short piece, which I really like doing. I think it's nice to kind of break the status quo, a little bit of the classical tradition by writing very brief pieces. So that's only a 30-second long piece. And then the following one is around 6 minutes long, and we'll just play them back to back. Okay, so it's World Without End first. little bit about how I wrote those two in particular. So the first one, the very short one, the way I achieved microtonality in that one was by, as soon as I plugged in the organ, it actually takes some time for the bellows to fill up. So while the bellows were still filling, I started playing, and the pipes don't have enough air to get the correct pitch. So they slowly start to fill up, and then it built up to a chord, and then I immediately unplugged it again, and then the same effect as it faded out. So a simple idea and kind of a short little piece. The second one, by putting less weight on the bellows, I made it so that the larger pipes took up the majority of the air that was there. So by holding down the lower notes on the organ throughout, the rest of the pipes didn't have enough air to function properly as they're supposed to. So it gave me control over, and you can hear like the slight change in pitches, which I could control just by adding more to the lower pitches, so they had even less to work with. So it really opens up the organ to sounds that are completely foreign to it. Like I said, these microtonal ideas. So each day I tried a different method of doing that, whether it was playing with only the stops, having the keys weighted down so I could move the stops throughout, or again, like today's improvisation, I manually changed the bellows and made a very soft kind of microtonal piece. Which again is just a wonderful opportunity for me because you don't often get a chance to work with an organ that intimately. Especially organists are very protective of their instruments. And of course I was very careful, and you know, the organ, it still plays fabulously and returns to its normal intonation. But there's a lot of possibilities just by changing the weights on the bellows or manipulating the bellows, or even just kind of overloading the organ by making it play more notes than it can really handle, like I did in that one. So that was what a lot of my work was this week. It's been really fun. So I was gonna have, do you wanna ask some questions before, or Justine's gonna play?
Justine playing.
Okay,
Well,
so
yeah.
so the last part of this presentation, this is a piece that I wrote for Justine. I actually wrote it for our 1-year anniversary.
Romantica.
A piece for flute and electronics. So we've listened to an electronic piece of mine, an acoustic piece of mine, and this piece is for a mixture of both. We're just going to play the first movement of it. It's also pretty short. This piece uses kind of all of these things. The electronics have noise elements, microtonal elements. I purposely wrote things into the flute part that push it beyond its natural means to make it kind of out of tune in certain spots. And this was premiered in Portugal last December also. So yeah, this is Where Is Your Mercy for flute and electric.
Ready when you are.
Brava!
And that's the shot.
Yeah, nice.
Great.
So yeah, any questions or?
I have like so many questions because I don't know anything
Go for
about music. So for a piece like this, where you guys are working together, like for Justine, since it's the electronic music sounds so different from the traditional stuff, do you prefer, like, what's the process like? Do you want to hear the electronic first and then practice? Do you want to see the music and then hear the electronic? Like, how does that go?
So Jake just sends it to me and pretty much just writes whatever he wants. And then I like to listen to the electronics as I go along. There are like timestamps in the music that show me like where phrases are kind of approximately supposed to line up with different sections in the electronics. So that helps a lot organizing it, because something like this can be so freely interpreted that it helps to have the electronics so I kind of know and become familiar with it as an accompaniment the same way I would with like a piano.
Yeah, it's very common in pieces like this to use a click track, so the performer will have
Metronome.
an earbud, telling them exactly where to be. But that's something that really frustrates me as a composer, because I feel like it limits the performer. And I want Justine to have the ability, if she's feeling like playing fast, she can play a little faster. So it kind of requires her to know the electronics a little bit better than maybe you would in another composer.
For this piece, I had the electronics on a playlist in my car, and when I was driving to school, I would listen to them, and that helped a lot. Because when I'm playing, it's hard to focus on everything all at once, so like get it in your head.
Electronic music is a new music, and you have this time the opportunity to play an old organ. What you are, if you have emotion or other sensation?
Well, I don't know. I mean, the feeling of working in an old church like that by myself was really interesting for me. I mean, I grew up Presbyterian, but I'm atheist now. So spending time like around these symbols is like has a really strong effect on me, just viscerally, because I grew up around that so much. But at the same time, I kind of had this rebellion against it. And when I was writing these improvisations, it was a lot about that. I think of churches as kind of like this rigid place where you're supposed to like behave and don't mess with the organ. So I wanted to really, open up and allow myself to be free and a little bit sarcastic, but at the same time just like very respectful, and I don't know, there's this sense of like this sovereign power, even though I don't believe in it anymore. It's still like a holy place because of the history and everything that's happened in a place like this. So yeah, a lot of feelings.
Okay, so at the very beginning, you talked about this type of music as acoustic electronics. That sounds kind of like an oxymoron, so what does that mean exactly?
Yeah, so the way it basically works out is you have electronic pieces, which are, just made in the computer, just played through here, like my first piece. An acoustic piece, like the organ pieces, even though we played them through speakers, recorded acoustically. And then electroacoustic, which is this last piece, where it's some mixture of the two. And yeah, the terminology can get a little bit confusing, but that's more or less the idea.
Great.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Thank
thank you.
you guys.
It's been wonderful being here.
Yeah, I don't want to leave.